Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ronald Barry Robinson and friends. With us, we have Miss Sharon Cheatham. We have Mr. Richard Dix Jr.
Good evening.
And we have Mr. Henry Hatter. Welcome all to the In My Opinion show.
Good evening, Ronnie, Cheryl, and Mr. Dix.
Henry, I'm going to address this topic to you first. Hate groups. Why are those that engage in hate, bigotry, racism, anti-religion, and so on, intent on hurting others, whether it's a different ideology, sexual orientation, color of one's skin, nationality, etc., etc.? Why can't we all get along?
Ron, that will never happen. But it is our challenge to control the incident rate, not to try to mitigate it. There are things that we can't possibly do because people do things according to their dictates or the circumstances. And I would submit to you that hate groups are basically a thing of the past in the United States.
No, you're wrong.
Hold it, you gotta let me make my point first. While there's an eruption of incident rates here recently, but you can go back over the past, and there are many kids, many black kids, and I took a survey before I came to this show tonight.
Okay.
And I asked kids what were hate groups, but some of the kids that I surveyed didn't even live in urban areas, so urban kids see hate groups from a different perspective. Also, it's different by politics a lot. Politics of a community, a closely knitted community. And they don't look at the trend, whether an incident is just an incident or a trend. Remember, all people in race groups and hate groups do not represent all the people. They may represent 5 or 10%, but that is not a trend. They're dangerous, they're vicious, they are very omnipresent because we can see them, we react to them. But to blame all of the people who have nothing to do with race is a travesty. We should have some evidence that shows that people indeed as a group are responsible for that kind of behavior. Now, if you go back 50 years, I would say yes. If you go back 60 years, I would say yes. Go back 70 years.
Well, how do you account for the Southern Poverty Law Center, which I'm a member, since 2000 have accounted for a 50% increase in hate groups? How do you account for that?
Well, 900.
And these are documented.
Okay, 900% could be you had an incident.
No, 900 hate groups have been identified, and of which there's several right here in Genesee County, in
And they've always
Davison.
been there. There are hate groups probably
Sure.
in Clio, okay? But we learn to live with them and minimize their impact. They can be there, but it's up to society to minimize the impact, okay? But 900%, if you had a 900% increase, you could have an incident rate of 1 in 1980. And then in 2001, you could have 9. That accounts for 900%. As Mark Twain said, they are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Okay.
I like that approach because the stats somewhat can certainly hide the dramatic increase since the president was elected. There's been a significant increase in hate groups, and Ron mentioned Genesee County, but certainly there are quite a few all over Michigan. But more importantly, they're all over the state of Michigan. And when you have individuals like the Von Brauns, who are celebrated for entering into the Holocaust Museum and gunning down a security officer, and let me be clear, he's celebrated by the hate groups, and he's gone down as a hero. But let us be clear that this is a terrorist group the Ku Klux Klan is a terrorist organization. They have a proven track record. The Nazis has a proven track record. So we're talking about these groups who, by definition of terrorizing or terrorism, fits the definition clearly. And because maybe race or maybe policy or perhaps protectionism through the conservatives, the far right conservative, which is a code word for racism. And let me say this, that these individuals who are in this far right column, as we like to refer to them, ought to be checked. And I believe that the DOJ, or the Department of Justice, ought to outline ways to rein them in. And if that means arresting, then that's something that needs to happen. I know that there's a lot of if this was the Black Panther Party, they would be gunned down. If this was any black organization that had been talking about killing whites or homosexuals or killing abortionists or killing anybody, they would all be under investigation. And not only under investigation, but they'll be reined in. They'll be brought in for questioning. They'll be isolating them, and they'll keep the spotlight on them. But because this is this terrorist group that is for the purpose of protecting whites, it is somewhat glazed over as, they're a bunch of clowns. These guys are we understand what they mean, but they're not harmless. They're just talkers. No, they're not. These individuals have had a proven track record. And we can go all the way back to 1927 when the Klan marched 10,000 of them in Whaley Park, right here in Genesee County, in Flint. These are just staggering statistics that they have been around for years, for centuries, and we continue to condone this. And there's no difference than those who are black nationalists. If they're down here saying that we're going to kill whites, they're just as bad as the individuals who's talking about killing blacks or Jews. And so we need to address this matter head on and not play the game or the word game and give them some way out to suggest that they're just a group of boys, and now they want to turn this into, and when I say they, I mean the media tend to say that, well, these are what we call loners or individuals who act alone. We want to individualize it and make sure that this is not classified as a group. And when the Homeland Security Director made that statement that there's a rise in hate groups and there needs to be something done, conservatives went crazy, and they wanted to. And this is by the way, this is the Republican Party that they reflect this type of behavior. And because you have a wing, not all Republicans, because there's one here in the studio, and I think you guys are not that way, but there's certainly a wing of the Republican Party that advocate this type of speech and advocate this type of violence or control mechanisms, and they continue to be reelected by their constituents because this is what the constituents call for. Well, we need to address this head on and expose them all. And unless we do that, we're going to be dealing with this issue in 2010 and 2012, 2015, 2020, just as we would have been dealing with it in the 1800s. This thing has been following us since 1800s, 1900s. I mean, all through the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And let me wrap it up here as far as my commentary, if I could say. I'm talking about when we go as far as when blacks who were being lynched at a record level. I believe then it was a president. Anyway, he was asked to do something about it in the 1930s, 1937, 1938, and Roosevelt. His wife asked him to commission a study to stop the lynching of blacks in the South, and he said that this would interfere with his constituency, and he can't do that. And
Was he a Republican?
no,
Okay,
but
thank you.
but the point is that this has been a part of our political, social, and just a part of the fabric of our society. And today we are still dealing with the same mess. And until we do something about it, and I don't mean violent, we don't need an uprising. What we need is some legislative acts that is intended to stop these individuals and put some teeth in this, lock them up. You know, I mean, but I can go on, and I don't want to get on that
I suggest
horse.
to you, Mr. Chair, here, that that's a bad description of Republican Party and of legislation in this country.
What's his opinion?
That was then. Okay, that was then. He's right. Those kind of things did happen.
And they still do.
They still do.
But you have to look at the incident rate.
One incident is too many.
Okay,
Right,
okay, that's a nice statement. Okay, but you're not going to eradicate it any more than you're going to eradicate women who are abused by their husbands. You know, it's just a way that life is. But I submit to you that I'm not trying to defend the Republican Party, but I'm trying to look at the facts. Okay, we couldn't live in this country with the hate groups the way you've described.
But we are.
But no, you don't let. Barack Obama would have never been elected president with that kind of a description of what we look like.
Barack Obama had a mainstream message. It's a message of inclusion. And I believe when we talk about something
23%
that,
Republicans voted for Barack Obama and probably outvoted blacks.
well, they voted their pocketbooks and rather than the ideology, you know, because when we have is that individuals voting, and that's a whole different subject. But and you make a good point though, Henry, that there's a lot of time has passed and there's clearly been tremendous progress, but we have yet far ways to go. Because when we have a rise in hate groups, individuals who are walking in the Holocaust Museum, when we have the same individual went into the Federal Reserve and tried to take Paul Volcker hostage, and he went to prison for what, 4 years? You know, this is the type, he should have got 20, but you know, we'll give him 4 years. He'll change. Come on out. And his beliefs didn't change. He got worse. And he went in there and converted some folks too. And you can believe that. And I speak that from, let me qualify that, as a former corrections employee, manager. There's different sects inside the prisons. And certainly you can qualify that too as a former employee. And that when we talk about skinheads and the Nazis, they're in there as well as the Muslims. So you have a number of sects that's in these prisons that are paroling, and they're going right to their base. And so we have to understand that we not only need to monitor this thing, we need to stamp it out with real measures and real tough talk and tough action.
I'll do my last comment.
Okay.
In the United States, we're a nation of laws and redress. You can trample on the rights of people, trying to go out and apprehend people for what you believe to be the suspicion of an act that a group has committed when only a single person has committed. There's a due process that we have to use. And that due process doesn't include identifying large groups of people. We have to nail it down to an individual. It's the same way that our rights here as Black Americans are protected. In that same vein, we wouldn't want all society to characterize us by the killings that go on every weekend in many large cities. We just don't do that.
If you're a member of Al Qaeda, you are a member and you're a terrorist. If you're a member of the Klan, if you're a member of the Nazi Party, if you're a member of the socialist, white socialist movement, if you're a member of these groups, you are a part of this organization. Therefore, you are a terrorist. And by the way, we won't individualize it. We need to charge them with conspiracy to commit acts. And we need to, and they really need to charge them with trying to overthrow the government, because that's their ultimate goal. And if we keep messing around with them, they're going to show up at the doorsteps, and they're hoping to get some type of race war, but it's not going to happen because, look, they put something in black folks' water that make us land a cut. And, so, there's nothing that's going to happen from our community. I don't believe that. I believe that if there's ever going to be some type of war, it'll be in Bosnia, it'll be somewhere else, and it'll be fighting individuals that may be, similar. But as it relates to these crimes and these terrorist group, we need to do something, and we have to stop taking it with individual. This was an individual act. What went wrong? And the media interview him and say, "Oh, he was a good boy, and when he grew up, he wasn't like that. I don't know what happened." We need to stop playing with these kid gloves and say what it is. Mm-hmm. He hate people. He's a hater. Mm-hmm. This group has been largely, they've hated people all their lives. Can they change? Sure. But until they do, they're classified as terrorists.
That's why they go to the courts.
Well, we're going to change gears here. Let's talk about company buyouts. Ford, Chrysler, GM offer deals to cut thousands of jobs. Thousands have already taken buyouts. Thousands of car dealerships are being forced to close. But here is the kicker. Those that took the buyouts are now suffering, can't find jobs, no health care, mortgage defaults are on the rise, retirement counts depleted. But while American automobile companies are downsizing, forcing thousands upon soup lines, these same companies are importing cars made in China, India, and South America. America has over 10 million men and women out of work. This is more people that presently live in the state of Michigan. Mr. Dix, what is your thoughts?
Well, GM, Chrysler, and Ford have finally made the tough choice. They've made some.
They were forced to make it.
They were forced to make some choices, and they really should have made these choices 10, 20 years ago. General Motors, as we know, has been classified as generous motors. And some of us all in this room know about the benefits, okay? And we understand that they've been really generous, all three of these corporations. Unfortunately, that when they would try and make changes, they would come to the table and ask the unions to take some concessions. They wouldn't be in the room 2 minutes, if 30 seconds. And these union leaders would get up and walk out because they would not take concessions. The inability to change has forced GM, Chrysler, and Ford to make the tough changes now, forcing them to make them changes. And so when we talk about buyouts, it's just a fact of life. And I believe that the former employees and employees should be very happy that they could get something because really they're in bad shape, all three of them. And I think Ford is making a slight comeback, and they seem to be on in better position than the other two. But overall, this is something that has to happen, and most of these employees, again, someone would take time off, get their bunions cut. They would go out, go home, sell drugs from their house, come back to work, sell dope in the factory, go out to their car, go to sleep. And this is not all the employees, but I'm saying people know who they are. And the reality is that they've had really a good ride. And so it's time for a change.
Sharon, what is your thoughts?
Well, I think that the automobile companies made changes too late. And a lot of those changes should have been made years ago. I think that they compensate their CEOs too much just like we were talking about the CEOs, when the companies are faltering and they still get their money, and company in
Being paid for failures.
right, right. But it was time for them to restructure. It's time for them to restructure, and I'm hoping that they'll, get above water again.
Henry, what is your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is the first part of the debate that I can't argue.
What?
I cannot argue this, but
Neither is a
I
Republican
disagree.
or a Democrat or a
I can't
liberal,
argue that.
Green Party.
I can't argue that. What they did, they should have shut
Amazed.
back about 40 years ago,
Yeah.
50 years ago, when the first Toyotas and Hondas came in. We had 57% of the marketplace for General Motors. We know that those Toyotas and Hondas did subtract from
Right.
the market share.
Right,
But they kept the same workforce. and
right.
What they did, they sold off the assets and ported them into the profit size to keep the stock holders happy and everybody happy, and disillusioned the Americans that they were still dominant, the world's largest corporation. But they were crumbling on the inside until
Right.
they sold everything that they could possibly sell by 2006. They had nothing else to say. Mr. Obama, I need some money.
Yeah.
And but no, you were a little bit too hard on General Motors in the early years, and the union, because it was General Motors who helped to build the middle class. They redistributed the wealth around the nation. They made us all bigger than what we might have been otherwise. We derived terrific benefits from that. African Americans, no matter as a segment, including all of the others, derived many, many benefits. They made us rich. We were 90% of the highest wage getters in the world. We derived a lot of benefit from General Motors. And now that it's down, we kick it to the side. But we all owe an obligation, and Ford and Chrysler. They built the armies and the Air Force and the navies that defended this country in the World War I, World War II, so that we can sit around this table today. And yet, we see no good in them. And we need to rethink that, because we are grateful for the middle class that they built over the 100 years that they were in existence.
Do you think that they did the right thing by going to the government and asking them for money, or do you think that they should have went to a private company and
No,
asked
I
for
think
them?
that they did the right thing to go to the government.
Government.
Government's got deep pockets.
At least they can print the money.
Yeah, there may not be any gold to back it up, but the presses are running overtime. What starts with a F and ends with a K? A first grade teacher, Mrs. Brooks, was having trouble with one of her students. The teacher asked, "Harry, what's your problem?" Harry answered, "I'm too smart for the first grade. My sister is in the third grade and I'm smarter than she is. I think I should be in the third grade too." Miss Brooks had had enough. She took Henry to the principal's office. While Henry waited in the outer office, the teacher explained to the principal what the situation was. The principal told Miss Brooks he would give the boy a test. If he failed to answer any of his questions, he was to go back to the first grade and behave. She agreed. Harry was brought in, and the conditions were explained to him, and he agreed to take the test. Principal, what is 3 times 3? Harry, 9. Principal, what is 6 times 6? Harry, 36. And so it went with every question the principal thought a third grader should know. The principal looked at Mrs. Brooks and tells her, "I think Harry can go to the third grade." Miss Brooks says to the principal, "Let me ask him some questions." The principal and Harry both agreed. Miss Brooks asks, "What does a cow have 4 of that I have only 2 of?" Harry, after a moment, answered, "Legs." Miss Brooks, "What is in your pants that you have but I don't have?" The principal wondered why would she ask such a question. Henry replied, "Pockets." Miss Brooks, "What does a dog do that a man steps into?" Harry, "Pants." Miss Brooks, "What starts with a C, ends with a T, is hairy, oval, delicious, and contains thin, whitish liquid?" Harry, coconut. The principal sat forward with his mouth hanging open. Miss Brooks, what goes in hard and pink and then comes out soft and sticky? The principal's eyes opened really wide, and before he could stop the answer, Harry replied, bubble gum. Miss Brooks, what does a man do standing up, a woman does sitting down, and a dog does on 3 legs? Harry, shake hands. The principal was trembling. Miss Brooks, what word starts with a F and ends with a K? That means a lot of heat and excitement. Harry, fire truck. The principal breathed a sigh of relief and told the teacher, put Harry in the 5th grade. I got the last 7 questions wrong. This is Ronald Barry Robinson and friends for the In My Opinion show, saying until next time, stay focused.